May I request that we remain standing until the Premier takes his seat together with his entourage. May I request the singing of the national anthem. Thank you. We may get seated. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I would like to start by declaring that my name is Tolan Tubazane from UNISA here in KZN. I'm no specialist in ESD, which is the early childhood development. But because I'm a grandfather, I'm a father, I'm a brother, I'm very, very interested in early childhood development because it is early childhood that shape the futures of the next generation of our citizens. And it is for that reason that I find myself playing a role as a co-champion of the ECD, which is one of the priorities of the KZN HRDC, which is the KZN Human Resources Development. I would like to start by acknowledging the presence of our Premier in our midst, Cousin. Also acknowledge the presence of all the MECs who are here today. I know that in our midst, we have got Mrs. Nontlatla Khoza, who is our MEC for Social Development. We also have got our MEC for Basic Education in our province, Ubaba Umshengu. Also acknowledge the presence of the Deputy Chairperson of the HRDC nationally, Sisi Azola Mayegiso. Also acknowledge the presence of the KZN HRDC today, who are led by Ubaba Umkize, our first deputy chairperson of the HRD. He is the first deputy chairperson because the chairperson is our premier. And our premier also happens to be the UNISA alumni. So as a person who works for UNISA, I'm very proud to see you, Baba, in our presence. Also acknowledge the presence of all the members of the KZN HRDC, the presence of our DG, Dr. Mkize, the presence of all the HODs in our province from various departments, present of our guest speakers, the DDG present, members of our co-host present, that is DUT, together with UNISA. But it is important to share with you why I am acknowledging these two, especially as the co-host. It's because at the end of the day, the real host is none other than the Premier himself, as the KZN HRDC resides in his office, and that is why he is also the chairperson of the KZN HRDC. Acknowledge the presence of our sponsors. I have seen in our midst Mrs. Nglesi, who is the CEO of the CETA, which is Education, Training, Development Practices. Also in our presence, that is important to acknowledge, is all the attendees that are here. Because we know that without you, this function wouldn't have taken place. We also acknowledge our colleagues, who happens to be our attendees as well, who are with us via the online platforms. Also important to acknowledge my partner in crime here, Sis Ruby Motaung, who will be the core program director with me. That was more of an acknowledgement, not a welcome, because at the end of the day, my chairperson, who is the first deputy chairperson of the KZN HRD, Baba Ukabazele, Mr. Edwin Mkize. I know you know him more on the labor issues, but he is also a father, and that is why he also leads us, especially when it comes to the issues of early childhood development, by virtue of serving as a member also of the KZN HRD. This is one of the very, very important priorities in our region. But as the day progresses, or as the days progresses, you will hear more about the entire ECD issues in our province. With that being said, can I request Baba Ukabazele to come to the podium and do an honor of welcoming all of us here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Program Director Babdubazan. Greetings as well to your co-program director, Sis Ruby. Sometimes I call her Mom Ruby. I want to recognize the presence and greet the Honorable Premier of our province, Mr. Sihle Zikalala, who is here present with us. Is not just a Premier here, but is the chairperson of this forum, the HRDC. I want to acknowledge the presence of the MEC for Education, Babu Mshengu. I want to acknowledge the presence of the MEC for Kokta, Babu Hlomuga. I must also acknowledge the presence of the MEC for Agriculture, Mam Moloi. I've heard that there is MEC for Social Development. I haven't seen her. If it's here, I'm also acknowledging her presence. I want to also acknowledge and appreciate the presence of all members of the HRDC who are led by the Premier of our province who are present here today. The members of EXCO who are here. Also the chairpersons and the champions and the members of the standing committees of the HRDC. It's very important, Premier, to acknowledge these members. It's very important the HRDC National First Deputy Chairperson, Azola Mayegiso, to acknowledge these members, because I always feel that these are dedicated members of our society who are willing to give in their skills to contribute their expertise in developing our society without expecting any gains. And we think that is very important, really, to acknowledge them so that we encourage them to continue to do that important work they are doing to build capacity, skills for our society. I must as well acknowledge the DG, Dr. Mkhize, Labor, Business, Government, Civil Society, our presenters who are here today. I'm not going to take time, Chair, because I know we started a bit late, but I must say we are very much excited as I greet all the members present here today and all the attendees who have taken their time to attend this meeting, the service providers, the practitioners, the knowledge providers, educators, and all the stakeholders that are here. We are very excited to host this ECD Indaba as the HRDC in KZN. I'm not going to be talking as to why we have this ECD Indaba, because we have our first chairperson who's going to be talking to the purpose. And I am not going to say we thank you because someone else later will come and thank you. But we are really excited that we are hosting this ECD Indaba. It started at the time when we were holding our strategic planning session as the second HRDC, which was launched by the Premier in November 2020. And the Premier gave us a very clear mandate on what he has identified as priorities. This is one of our main priorities as the HRDC that was identified by the Premier, which is the ECD. And we really think that it's a main priority because, as you can see, that the theme for this HRDC, for this ECD Indaba, is giving our children of KZN a flying start to the future. There is a Zulu saying that says, "Zibanjwa semaphuphu." That's where the real development must take place. In our strategic planning, there was a debate as to how we begin to prepare our children at the very early stage of development, to prepare them in terms of skills, to be able to be at par and face the challenges that are coming with the fourth industrial revolution in terms of skills, even in terms of science. And we felt that maybe we must begin to deal with the real issues. Hence, there was this proposal. But I must also say, we're really happy with our ECD Standing Committee that they have made this dream come true, that we need to have this kind of engagement today. The Standing Committee has done a great job in that regard. I will just do this one quote and say a few words and sit down. What science tells us about ECD? It says, early childhood is a key period for brain development. During the early years of life, the brain is characterized by plasticity, which is elasticity or flexibility, which means that experiences and external stimulation influences its formation and development. This can have positive and negative consequences. Positive experiences such as good nutrition support normal brain development and have beneficial consequences for a child's life. I think we note that point. Because it's actually driving me to the last point before I depart. While negative experiences such as prenatal alcohol exposure, violence, and nutritional deficiencies can cause abnormal neutral and behavioral development, hindering the child's potential, the primary caregiver has an essential role to play in the main source of brain stimulation through daily interactions with young children. New research has also demonstrated that socio-emotional and cognitive skill development are intertwined, and that health and nutrition in early childhood are as associated with child development outcomes, thus strengthening the need for holistic approach to ECD. So, while I'm about to sit down, I think we take this point as very important. I think the development of child, it tells us, it starts not from when the child goes to school. It starts from the mother's womb. It starts from the mother's womb. That's where the development starts. Part of the development, I would say, is what I've always argued, the role that families and parents play in the development of the child. You learn to speak before you even go to school. You learn to walk before you even go to school. And that is the role of family, that is the role of mother, that is the role of a father as well, father plus. But in the main, we know who played that particular role. But I'm saying that in the development of the child, there are two key role players, the family and the providers of knowledge. That is very critical because when we approach this issue, we must not be just inward looking. We must also be able to look at other external and international experiences. How in Cuba they take the issue of child development where they say, teach your child. What is happening in other countries? I'm raising it because if you think that we can just be narrow and look at the issue of development of a child and don't look at the holistic issues of the socio-economic conditions, the issues of inequality, we will be actually missing it. Because it tells you that as our children grow up, the ground is not level when there are issues of inequality. And therefore, we said we need to have this engagement because this engagement will bring a lot of ideas, bring a lot of expertise, will be able to guide us under the leadership of the Premier as the HRDC of KZN as to how we need to move forward. And we are therefore looking forward at the outcomes of this HRDC. I may not expand on other issues that I wanted to cover because of time, but I think those are issues that are very important that we need to take into considerations as we are going to be engaging. Thank you very much as I welcome you. Siyabonga.
Thank you, Kabazele. Thank you, First Deputy Chairperson of the KZN HRDC. Ngicabanga ukuthi sonke sesingaqala ke manje sihlale sikhululeke sinwebe ngoba ubaba uKhabazele usesiwelcomile ekhaya. Kuye kube inkinga kwesinye isikhathi ufike emzini womuntu bese ufike nje uyakhululeka unga-welcomanga. So ke siyayibonga i-warm welcome yakho. Colleagues, let me also firstly apologize that MEC of Social Development, MEC Koza, has apologized because the Premier has deployed her somewhere, and as a result, she is not with us. But let me also hasten and acknowledge MECs present with us who are accompanying our Premier, MEC of Agriculture and Rural Development in our province, MEC Stolemloyi. We acknowledge your presence, ma'am. MEC of Kokta, MEC Hlomoga, you are welcome, Baba. Thank you. According to the program, I'm now going to request a person who is very, very important and a friend of the KZN HRDC. She is coming from the national or South African HRDC, which is based in Pretoria. Her name is none other than Sisi Uazola Mayegiso. Usisige Uazola, I will just briefly read a profile yake for the benefit of all of us present here. Azola is currently on sabbatical, which is sabbatical leave for her financial services career. She was a CEO of Sanlam Investment Management until 31 December of 2019. She was responsible for listed equities, fixed income, balanced and absolute return investment strategies. She was also a member of Sanlam Investment Executive Committee. Prior to joining Sanlam, she worked at Vunani Fund Managers as an executive director and a head of business development. She has her roles where she drove strategy, was investment banking executive, served on subcommittee of the board, and chaired the Vunani Foundation. She started her career at Alexander Forbes as an investment consultant. In June 2021, she was appointed as a mentor to PhD scholars, which was funded by Pierre Elliott Trudeau Foundation in Montreal, Canada. She's a co-chair of Lulaleb Foundation since June 2021, the deputy chair of Human Resource Development Council of South Africa, which I've already alluded to, since December of 2019. She's a board member of Africa Tigani NPC. She's also a board member of Better Point. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the podium our sister Azola. Yes, they always say dynamite come in small pockets. There are so many things that might not have been said in this profile that I have read to you. You are warmly welcome, madam. You can come and take the podium and share your experiences with us. Thank you.
You're gonna, okay. Sanbonani, I am very excited to be here this morning. Thank you very much, Program Director, for that introduction. All protocol observed. I'm very excited to be here this morning because this topic of early childhood development is one that's very close to my heart. It's one that is very, very important for the human capital capacity of South African citizens and obviously citizens of the world. So I'm here to provide a message of support or really to provide a backdrop with respect to what is happening nationally, what is the national picture where ECD is concerned. I am particularly pleased that the province of KZN, I would say you are actually spearheading, you are ahead with respect to this, because this is certainly the first ECD Indaba that I've been invited to. So you can give yourselves applause for the fact that you are actually leading the way in this particular department. And also, Premier, just to give some compliments to you for the fact that, one of the things that we've realized at a national level within the HRDC is that when premiers actually chair the provincial HRDCs, there is a lot of, progress that gets achieved, and issues of human capital development at a provincial level really get prioritized. So I'd like to compliment you on that. Without further ado, I was asked to specifically talk about ECD in the context of the skills that are required for the fourth industrial revolution. But I've purposely decided to talk about the state of ECD, just so that everyone has an idea of what is happening, what the steady state is with respect to ECD in the country, nationally. And as you deliberate from a provincial context, obviously, you will have that as a backdrop with respect to what the challenges are, what progress has been achieved to date. And then I will, towards the end of my presentation, then talk to the skills that are required, for a prepared, child for the fourth industrial revolution environment that we are living in currently in the 21st century. And I'll address that from two perspectives. I'll address it from the perspective of the practitioners themselves, because they themselves need to be properly equipped for, competencies that are required in the 21st century. But also they need to impart skills to the kids in order to ready them for a successful future, to future-proof their futures. Because we are where we are now, this is the era that we are living in, and there are certain core competencies that we need to have in place. With respect to the contents of my presentation, and I'll try to speak very fast because I've only been allocated 20 minutes, is I will provide the HRD context to ECD, and obviously my perspective is the national perspective. Just remind everyone why it is important, why ECD, early childhood development, is an important thing for us to get right. And then I will provide the national context to early childhood development, covering the challenges, what progress has been made, etc. And then I will talk to the recommendations that from a national HRDC perspective we have put forward to address the national challenges that will be highlighted. And then I will, as I said, talk to the state of ECD skills for the fourth industrial revolution and then conclude. So ECD forms part of program 1 of the 5 programs, and we have 5 programs that we are pursuing as the Human Resources Development Council of South Africa. It forms part and parcel of program 1, which is foundational education with emphasis on STEM, languages, and life orientation or skills. So it is a key strategic priority in the Human Resources Development Council strategy towards 2030. Specifically, in our 2021 to 2024 strategic priorities, what we would specifically like to achieve where ECD is concerned is to expand the institutional delivery mechanism for ECD. And what I mean by that is we essentially want to ensure that there is development of an appropriate caliber of ECD practitioners in the country in sufficient numbers, because currently, the demand for quality ECD practitioners far exceeds the supply that is available in the ecosystem. So we want these quality ECD practitioners developed in sufficient numbers with sufficient skills to support the implementation of our national integrated ECD policy and program. We also, this is also aimed at this institutional delivery mechanism. It's aimed at ensuring that quality ECD services are available in townships and rural communities at an affordable cost, because we've, identified that to be a challenge, that, quality ECD is not readily available in our, previously disadvantaged, I would say, communities. In this regard, the HRDC has called for the Department of Basic Education, because essentially, the effective date for the transition away from the Department of Social Development to the DBE of ECD is supposed to happen as of next month. But I think in the program, there's a section that's going to tell you exactly where that process is. But in effect, it's supposed to be taken over and housed within the Department of Basic Education as of next month. And what we are saying and imploring to the DBE is that they need to collaborate with private providers, because there's no use in reinventing the wheel. There are people, whether it's in the private sector or the NPO sector, who have been delivering effective ECD programs, and we are saying the DBE need not necessarily reinvent the wheel in trying to capacitate the thousands of unregistered, ECD centers that currently are in the system. We are imploring for a partnership with people that have done it effectively, and we are happy to actually point you in the right direction, or point the DBE in the right direction with respect to who these providers are. And we are saying this needs to happen in the context of standardizing ECD content, such that at the end of the day, the outcomes that are achieved, for these children are uniform. We don't get a mixed bag of results. And that also the training of ECD practitioners needs to be done in a coordinated manner, in collaboration with the private sector. They've done it, they continually do it. There's continual professional development that happens in this sector as well. And we are saying the DBE just needs to lean on the people that have managed to attain positive outcomes in this respect, and not try to do it themselves. Now, on to the importance of early childhood development. We know, and there's been countless research that has been published that talks to the fact that ECD is a critical determinant of future health, well-being, and learning of children. And I'd like to echo what Ukabazela said earlier, just with respect to the importance and the impact, the long-term impacts of making sure that we give our children a proper, solid foundation. So what it does is it helps with concentration, first of all. The attention span of kids, whenever they start their preschooling, it improves remarkably to when they were not at school, when they were in the home environment. It teaches them patience and teamwork. So children learn to respect different opinions at a very early age, embrace diversity, cooperation, and equality. And already, some of the things that, particularly around teamwork and collaboration, this is one of the core competencies, for the 21st century. So if we begin to instill them at a very early age, it's going to have long-term effects with respect to ensuring that when the kids get to their adulthood, they are already, au fait with the concept of collaboration, and they do it with ease. It encourages holistic development, both cognitive and mental development, physical and emotional development, as well as social skills, which are essential for future success. Properly trained ECD educators have been proven to be effective at individually supporting children in areas where they struggle. And this ensures that the children gain confidence in their skills as they grow. And building this confidence is essential for a child's healthy development in all areas, and also crucial for their success as adults. There's also an economic case for investing in early childhood development. The central role of ECD is to reduce socioeconomic inequality and to improve educational quality, as Ukabazela was saying. The NDP, our National Development Plan 2030, also recognizes that quality ECD is a key lever to overcoming poverty and inequality. Research has also proven that good foundational learning has a lifelong impact on long-term educational outcomes as well as earning potential. So if we ensure that we properly equip our kids from a very early age, this is going to have the resultant impact of ensuring that they, from an economic emancipation point of view, they'll be able to be financially independent and their earning ability is boosted, which is, one would think that that's a surprising thing, but research has actually proven it. So now on to the national context of ECD, what is happening with early childhood development at a national level? So certainly, the understanding of, the importance of ECD has propelled government to have an amplified focus on improving access to ECD services and the quality of provision. What we know is that 80% of children, and this is, was contained in a report that was released back in 2016, that showed that 80% of children of ages 3 to 6 are not in accredited ECD schools. And this is because of a lack of qualified teachers in ECD, as well as poor infrastructure, which also prevents ECD facilities from being registered. So when norms and standards, with respect to the safety of the children are not met from an infrastructure point of view, that is one of the things that results in these ECD centers that are across the country. I mean, it's in excess of 3,000 of them that are currently unregistered. That's what results in them not being registered. So President Ramaphosa, in his State of the Nation address in February 2019, began to move South Africa away from viewing ECD as a child protection function towards viewing it as an early learning function by announcing that it's actually being moved from the Department of Social Development to the DBE, as I said earlier. And the benefit of this is that it streamlines the education continuum in that obviously it sits within the department that is chiefly responsible for educating our kids at a foundational level. And it also creates positive pressure for greater allocation of resources to ECD as a mechanism for preventing educational disparities that we are seeing in the foundational phase grades and beyond. So our ECD policy commits government to make quality ECD services universally available and specifically emphasizes provision of quality ECD educators to facilitate universal availability and equitable access. And this particularly talks to the expansion of the number of quality ECD educators as well as the diversity of the workforce. And one of the other things that it emphasizes is that the workforce needs to be adequately resourced for all publicly funded ECD programs. There's an inequitable provision of ECD training for the poorest communities in deep rural areas. There's also little training of ECD workers to work with children with special learning needs, and these are children with disabilities in particular. The monitoring and evaluation tools that are available are problematic because, are problematic because they are either too complex or too simplistic in order to be able to provide proper data that will then inform decision-making when it comes to addressing shortcomings where ECD provision is concerned. So it's really hard to track the impact of the existing providers, in this ECD space. And so it becomes quite difficult to then address the actual problems in the now actual provision of ECD education for our children. The other issue is that funding for training and development of ECD, of the ECD workforce is minimal, random, arbitrary, and lacks a clear plan. I'm just mapping for you what is happening, the national picture. Children with disabilities, I think I'm repeating this point, kids with disabilities aren't specifically and adequately catered for in the system. And I would be curious to learn what the KZN situation looks like in this regard. And also the current scope and type of teacher training that is available and adequate resources for teaching and learning of children with disabilities are a cause for concern. The ECD policy is clear on the types of services that need to be provided, and where there is a bit of a shortcoming is that we just need leadership in order to ensure that the glaring gaps are actually closed. This is with respect to the provision of ECD. The other issue is that remuneration of ECD practitioners is problematic, particularly in your rural areas. What the research has shown is that, those practitioners are not even paid the minimum wage, which is 3,500 Rand. So what are our recommendations then as the HRDC to attempt to address these challenges? Firstly, effective implementation of teacher training to ensure professional standards in teaching is what is required. And what will facilitate this is accurate and credible data on training providers. We need to keep track on that. ECD training that is taking place also needs to be monitored, as well as the number of trainees that are undergoing this training. Also, the numbers that are successfully completing the qualifications need to be tracked so that we have a very clear picture of exactly what is happening on the ground. The second recommendation is to ensure that sound governance and management is in place in these ECD schools. Thirdly, we need to expand the level and quality of school support that is provided by the districts. What we would like to implore now that ECD provision is moving away from the DSD to the DBE, there's some very good work that the Department of Social Development had done in this sphere of ECD that we are saying the DBE needs to take forward and not discard it and start completely new programs. So what we are imploring them to do is to continue with the Find Every ECD Center campaign, which was launched by the DSD in 2019. And its main purpose, the main purpose of this Find Every ECD campaign was to locate and categorize every unregistered ECD service to determine the level at which each one operates in order to determine the kind of support that is required for them to comply with norms and standards for registration. So as I said previously, more than 3,000 of them were verified, on the back of this Find Every ECD Center campaign. But that work needs to continue because I'm pretty certain that there are more to be unearthed. The DSD also entered into strategic partnerships in an attempt to get, these unregistered ECD centers empowered or capacitated from an infrastructure point of view. So they partnered up with the private sector, and there are very specific relationships that are currently in place, and we're saying the DBE needs to continue with these relationships in order to ensure that, to the extent that these private companies can continue to provide the support, that more and more of these unregistered ECD centers can at least be given or supported with the improved infrastructure. Because the key concern, again, is safety of the children is of paramount importance, as well as their protection. The DBE is also to continue, you were saying, Mr. Kabazela, previously, that ECD is not only the domain of the practitioners when they are at the school, that the caregivers and the parents are also quite a critical component of that. So the DSD also knows this, by the way, and they launched a parental or primary caregiver program, which basically trains the parents and the caregivers on what is expected of them with respect to properly and adequately supporting their children that are in the ECD environment. We also believe that there's legislation that's required to regulate the employment, but particularly the pay of ECD practitioners, and that ECD centers need to specifically cater for disadvantaged children. And I mean, you know, there are lessons that can be gleaned from the workplace, you know, on the exact, you know, notion of how to cater for people with disabilities in these ECD schools. We are also intimating that there needs to be an adoption of M&E tools that have been proven to be effective in private ECD centers, because whether you're looking at the private sector or the NPO sector, there are very effective M&E tools that are utilized there in order to track the impact of ECD on these children. We're also saying that a comprehensive funding policy, because funding is a big issue with respect to resourcing the ECD practitioners. We need a comprehensive funding policy that is not arbitrary, that is very much well considered in order to properly support ECD teachers. And also in order to ensure universal coverage, especially in the outlying deep rural areas, we need to ensure that ECD centers are the mode of delivery of, you know, of ECD. And what we are intimating is, to the extent possible, we need to ensure that these ECD centers are actually available in each village. Sorry, I forgot to move the slide forward here. I don't know what happened to my slides. Okay. That thing to the left there was meant to be a picture of Klaus Schwab. Klaus Schwab is the founder and chairman of the World Economic Forum, who coined the term the Fourth Industrial Revolution. And a quote from his book that he released in 2016, he basically said that as the human race, we are at the beginning of the technology revolution that is fundamentally changing our lives. I actually wanted to, I'm not sure what happened to my slides here. This slide is not showing properly, it's corrupted. Anyway, what I just wanted to highlight with this particular slide are the skills that are required for you to be an effective worker, let's say, in the 21st century. And what it meant to highlight, or it meant to draw a contrast with, is the top 10 skills as highlighted by the World Economic Forum back in 2015, to what that picture looks like in 2020, which is their latest jobs report that they have released. And these top 10 skills are complex problem solving, critical thinking, creativity, people management, coordinating with others, emotional intelligence, judgment and decision making, service orientation, negotiation, cognitive flexibility. So what the World Economic Forum is arguing is that in order for a worker to be an effective worker and to be future-proofed in terms of that worker's career journey, they need to have competencies in these top 10 skills that they've highlighted. And so And so the skills, therefore, that are needed in a complex world, and we are operating in a very complex world with exponential advances in technology, which means that the future that we are always going to be operating in will be volatile, will be uncertain, will be complex, and it will be ambiguous. So in order to be able to operate effectively in that kind of environment, you need to have the 10 competencies that I highlighted earlier. But also, the other competencies that you require is you need to have literacy, to be literate. So literacy is a key thing. And we know that we have shortcomings when it comes to literacy levels of our kids in the basic education environment. Not only do you need to be literate, but you also need to be digitally literate. You need to be self-directed problem solvers. You need to have social skills that include being able to work collaboratively, be ethical, responsible, and accountable. And I just included that chart on the right just to show the chronology of what we as humans have been through in the various industrial revolutions that we've encountered. And I just show a timeline at the bottom there. So in the 1800s, since 1784, that's when the Industrial Revolution effectively started, and it was the first Industrial Revolution that had, where we saw, or humans saw, the introduction of the first mechanization. And mechanization, it was the beginning stages of automation, in essence. And then in the 1900s, from 1870 to be specific, then we saw mass production that came into the fore, also with components of it, large components of it being mechanized. And then the third industrial revolution, which started in 1969, then also saw the use of electronics and in information technology to further automate production. And now we are at a stage where we are in the fourth industrial revolution, with a very high degree of complexity that we need to operate with. And it's all about, a combination of existing in a cyber environment, but combining that with a physical environment. So it's like, it's a hybrid, which is why it's essential that we increasingly train ourselves to become digital natives, because the world increasingly is becoming more and more about the use of technology and effective use of technology at that. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about specifically the digital competencies that are required in this environment. And what those are really are information and data literacy, communication and collaboration, digital content creation, safety, and problem solving, as has already been referred to. And if we are just to look at the detail of what this entails, and as I said previously, so the actual practitioners that are teaching our kids need to be proficient in these digital skills. Not only do they themselves need to be proficient, but they also need to begin to prepare our kids to also be digital natives of the future. So where information and data literacy are concerned, we're talking about the ability, to utilize the internet, to browse the internet, browsing, searching, and filtering data and digital content, having the ability, more importantly, to evaluate that data and synthesize it, because there's a lot of, again, fake news. We live in a very complex world at the moment. So we need to really properly equip ourselves to be able to sift what is real and what is not. Also have abilities to manage this data, information, and digital content. And where communication and collaboration are concerned, this really talks to collaborating, interacting through with one another, the teachers amongst themselves, interacting through digital technologies, sharing information through digital technologies, engaging in citizenship through these technologies, collaborating, having the ability, netiquette, it's a very funny term, but really what it is having the ability, to navigate the internet, to be able to utilize the internet in a proper way. Digital content creation, also a very key one. And in fact, what is happening in the private sector is that they are beginning to teach the kids at an ECD level principles of programming and coding, but in a very basic way. They just getting them used to the language that is used in coding, in an age-appropriate manner, let me say. So that's what they are beginning to do, but it's at a very, very infant stage. So digital content creation, ECD practitioners need to be able to create this content, understand copyright and licensing, and also safety is important, where you also look after yourself, because ultimately there are blue light rays. If you are constantly going to be engaging with these tablets and laptops, what have you, that has a negative impact on your eyes. So we just need to also adapt to saying you need to start wearing those glasses that have an ability to block those blue light rays from coming into your eyes. Otherwise, the deterioration of your eyes is going to be affected. Problem solving is also one of the things that has already been highlighted. And I think I've taken up a lot of your time. Just to conclude then, what I would like to leave you with is to say that, as I've already highlighted in my presentation, there are lots of challenges that are facing the ECD environment in the country. And I'm chiefly just going to refer to three, which is the demand for quality ECD practitioners just is not being met by the supply thereof. There are infrastructure challenges, which results in thousands of unregistered ECD centers. So what I would like to propose is, whilst we appreciate and understand that it's important to secure a bright future for our kids, to ensure that they thrive in this fourth industrial revolution era that we are living in, it's important that we also get the basics right. So we need to, what I'm trying to argue for is that we need to walk before we sprint, before we can run. We need to ensure that the steady state of ECD, we get that right first prior to venturing into the fourth industrial revolution issues. Private and NPO ECD providers, as I've just said, are beginning to look into adopting 4IR approaches, but they are extremely light touch at the moment on the children, and the emphasis is rather being to develop competencies of the practitioners themselves. And then lastly, qualified ECD practitioners who are currently in the system can therefore begin the process of equipping themselves with digital competencies. I think that's what I have to say with respect to 4IR and ECD, and I hope that my presentation was useful input over the next 2 days. Thank you.
Can we give a round of applause to Sisu Azola? Thank you so much, Sisu Azola. We really appreciate what you have just shared with us. Colleagues, let me request that wherever there is a speaker before you, you jot down issues that you want to raise, which should then be raised, especially when there is going to be the time for comments and questions. Write down the name of the speaker that you want to address your issues to, because that will also assist so that you don't forget. Thank you again, Sis Azola. I've already mentioned that our MEC for Social Development is not with us today. In her space, we've got our MEC, Umama Umloi. So what we are going to do for the speaker, on behalf of the MEC, firstly, we will ask our HOD of Social Development, Mrs. Vilagazi, to share the address that was supposed to be shared by Umama Ukoza. Immediately after that, we are going to have our MEC Mloi, who will then assist us by introducing the Premier to us, who is our today's guest speaker, who will give us the keynote address. Mrs. Vilagazi, may I request that you take the podium? Thank you.
Thank you very much, program directors, for the opportunity. I would like to greet the Honorable Premier, who is also the chairperson of this council, the deputy chairpersons, all the MECs that are present this morning, MEC for the Department of Agriculture, MEC Sithole Mloyi, MEC for Department of Education, MEC Mshengu, MEC for Department of Kokta, MEC Hlomuga, our esteemed guests that are here, good morning. We are excited to be part of this Indaba as the Department of Social Development. I'm standing here on behalf of the MEC for Social Development. Ours is easy because we are relinquishing the function to the Department of Education. But it's important for the sector and for all the important stakeholders to understand what is actually happening right now as far as ECD is concerned and what is it that we are transferring to the Department of Education. We have prepared a presentation. We will try to be as brief as possible because some of the issues were highlighted by the previous speaker. I was so excited that in her speech, she does understand the challenges that are there within the sector. So we will then appraise on the developments as far as the ECD function shift is concerned, the current status quo as far as ECD is concerned, and also how this ECD function is managed within the province. She has already indicated the role of the non-profit organizations because currently the non-profit organization is the sector that actually manages the ECDs. I won't cover much the background because he has indicated that what we are doing as far as the ECD function shift, it follows the pronouncement by His Excellency President Ramaphosa in 2019 in the SONA address that the ECD function will then migrate to the Department of Basic Education. And this is in line with the 54th National Conference of the ANC's resolution that there must be a systematic relocation of the responsibility of the ECD from DSD to the Department of Basic Education. In order to ensure that there was that smooth transition at a national level, the National Department of Basic Education then contracted GTech. GTech is an entity within the National Treasury that assisted both departments to come up with the strategies of ensuring that there is that smooth transition. And what was also proposed was that there should be work streams that will assist for that transition to take place. I can indicate to you, esteemed delegates, that the work streams included finance and budget, because it was important that the function, the resources follows the function. So budget was identified and ring-fenced, the budget that is utilized by Department of Education. Same applies to the province. The National Treasury has already assisted us. So which means that with effect from April 1, that budget that was allocated to DSD is now with the Department of Education. And then also what was important was the issue of data management, monitoring and evaluation, because that was important even to understand how do we account in terms of performance information and the data that is available within the Department of Education as far as ECD is concerned. Also, what was important was the issues around human resource management and labor relations. So there was a stream responsible for that, as well as the legislation and policies, as well as contracts and claims, because how the program is run right now, the NPOs will forward their claims and then they are processed and they are paid accordingly. And the issue of communication and stakeholder management, including infrastructure. What is important that we can indicate is the positive leadership that the province had in order to ensure that this process happens. For example, in terms of the institutional arrangements, there were committees, a task team at a national level as well as at a provincial level. At a provincial level, we had an inter-provincial ECD function shift, a process that was coordinated by the Department of Education, supported by the Department of Social Development, and there were bi-weekly meetings. And also in the province, there was a task team that was led by the Department of Education, HOD, supported by HOD Social Development, as well as the provincial task team, where both the departments would meet regularly and then update the HODs on the progress of the different work streams. I need to indicate that this process also involved legal issues, because there was then supposed to be, remember, in terms of the current Children's Act, there are sections in the Children's Act that were delegating the MEC for social development to do certain functions, even from at a national level. So which means that that task, based on what is in the Children's Act, are the responsibilities that will move to Minister DPE at a national level and MEC Social Development MEC Department of Education at a provincial level. Already there was a memorandum of agreement that has been signed by both MECs, MEC DSD and MEC DOE, and there was a proclamation as well that was signed by the Premier of the province, Honorable Zikalala, that was done on the 18th of August and gazetted on the 16th of September 2021. So the work stream now was to ensure that the contracts that are there, even issues around SLAs, are managed accordingly. So which means that when the function shifts, it's not a matter of just doing it loosely, but you have to ensure that even the prescripts and from legal point of view, you follow all the processes. And then in terms of the budget, I think I won't go to everything. I think what is important is that the budget that is moving to the Department of Education as of 1 April 2022 is 615.7 million, which is a budget that was supposed to be at DSD. So it follows the function. I think that is important. That budget also includes the equitable share, conditional grant, as well as the current payments. In terms of the human resource management, we can confirm that we are transferring 70 officials to the Department of Education as Department of Social Development. 63 of those officials are social workers, and 7 of them are admin and technical support. The 7 of those officials are on contracts and are aligned to the conditional grant that we have. We have a conditional grant that is assisting some of the ECDs that the previous speaker was referring to, that you find that you can't register because there are infrastructure issues and also there are challenges in terms of the access. So that's why then we received a conditional grant to support those ECDs. So that conditional grant, it's also one of the officials working for that project that are transferred to the Department of Education. I must also indicate that we also consulted organized labor. Remember, when there are human resources, obviously there are labor issues. So we had to ensure that we consult organized labor so that they are on board in terms of the movement of the officials to the Department of Education, and they were very much excited that they were taken through the process. So which then says that both departments have implemented the change management strategies in order to ensure that there is smooth transition of the process. Already within the Department of Education, they've already identified even the working space for these officials, and also Department of Education, they've already looked into the organizational structure to accommodate the new officials that are coming with a function. And also from the social development side, we've also looked into our organizational structure and also ensured that the function that is no longer with us does not appear in our organogram. And then infrastructure milestones, we can confirm that, remember the ECDs are run by NPOs. We have those that are in the private residences and so on, you know best. But what is important, there are those ECDs in infrastructure where they were built by government. So we have 23 of them in the province that are being transferred to the Department of Education, 23 of them. And then we have also 3 ECD mobile trucks. We have ECD mobile trucks to actually assist those communities that are in the deep rural areas. So a truck comes to your area, and then it has toy library programs inside, and then it becomes an ECD, and then it moves to another village and so on. So we have 3 of them in the province. One Ilembe, the other one at Ugu, and then the third one within Umkanyagude. So those are also transferred to the Department of Education. I think I've covered the issue of the infrastructure for officials. I think it's important also to indicate some other matters to note. The excitement of both departments to go through this journey is also realized by the fact that when we prepare reports, because we account, as I indicated to you, to our MECs and the Premier in the province and also national. So when we attend even national portfolio committees, we prepare one report because we work together and each department understands what is happening on the other side so that there is transparency in terms of the process. So recently we had joint meetings where we also were accounting to our MECs as both departments. And we must indicate that even recently the MEC for Education was visiting some of the ECDs because he wants to understand the look and feel to what is it that is coming in April. So I always joke with my counterpart in the Department of Education that, but you must also visit an ECD that is in a Rondaville with no windows and see what is happening there. Because we have those ECDs that we are reluctant to say we can't register you, but it closed down, but they will not close down. But you know best because you come from the communities. In terms of the state of the ECDs in the province, I won't cover much here because some of the issues, she covered them. One was going to come closer to what is happening in the province. The legislative mandates, we know that there are international instruments. We also have ours that are the instruments in the province, your constitution, also that includes the Social Assistance Act, Children's Act, and so on. And then I want to cover the actual ECDs that are being transferred to the Department of Education. All in all, the number of centers that are transferred are 4,360 in the province. And that includes 206,000 children. So these centers are in different categories. Some are ECDs that are funded through equitable shares. Some are those that have received a conditional grant. Others are unregistered and also managed by NPOs. Others are unregistered, unfunded, as well as those that are privately owned but registered, because we do register those that are privately owned, and because we need to monitor and ensure that they comply with the norms and standards. So what the previous speaker was referring to say, we need to ensure that we know each and every ECD in our communities, because we want to leave no child behind. So which means that that's where the Department of Education also will take on and move forward in ensuring that all the children are accounted for. I won't go much to this slide. I thought someone was going to flight my presentation. We've got quite a number of these children as I unpack them in terms of the districts. I won't go to that one because it's gonna waste your time. But we know all those that are registered and registered with us, the spread across the province in different districts. There are institutional arrangements that are in place. For example, there is a provincial intersectoral childcare forum where we all meet together as different stakeholders to look into this. What is critical and key on this matter, especially on the coordination of ECD, that function of coordination, there is a meeting next week on the 23rd, where we will then hand over that coordination function, because it was social development leading coordinating. Now it's going to be the Department of Education. But we do have other departments playing a very critical role in terms of the coordination. For example, we are not saying that when the child is born, that's where then we start to think about ECD. We're saying upon gestation. So which means that we think about ECD, because Department of Health must be on board in ensuring that the mother attends antenatal services, so that she gives birth to a healthy child. And then you find that Department of Education is on board as well, Department of Social Development, and so on. So it's quite a range of all of us ensuring that that takes place. It's still going to happen, but in terms of the coordination, Department of Education is leading as far as that process is concerned. I want to indicate the issue of the focus areas. They are currently, in terms of the programs, the stimulation of the children, basic health services. What is important that we like that partnership with the Department of Health, there is a program that Health calls Phila Mntwana. So you find that in working together with the Department of Health, they ensure that the parents or the mothers or the caregivers of those children in ECDs are supported accordingly. I want to quickly cover the challenges that we are encountering as the Department of Social Development, to share with the Department of Education and the delegates, is access to ECD services. She has also touched on that, as well as also access to ECD services by children with disabilities. That is a challenge because you find that some of the children with disabilities do not access ECD services. And then also what is a challenge is the mismanagement of funding. At times you find that we fund the NPOs, but then there are problems in terms of managing the finances that we give them. And then another challenge is the basic health care services. You find that not all the children get healthcare services that attend ECD, but we know that through the Pilamtwana program by Department of Health, there is improvement in ensuring that that is taken care of as part of mitigation strategies. And then lastly is the ownership syndrome, program director. You find that there are those people who started an ECD, maybe he's a retired teacher and then started an ECD. So there is this ownership, even if we are saying, listen, we cannot find you as an individual, it must be a community-based program. You will have people supporting her, being members of the community, but there will always be this ownership, and maybe the daughter wants to take over when the owner passes on and so on. So I'm sure as we move to the Department of Education, there will be strategies to manage that so that it doesn't compromise the services within the ECD. So what is important as I sit down, a program director, are matters that need integration as we move forward with the ECD program. For example, issues of the effects of substance abuse on children. The deputy chair did cover a little bit on that part. We know that if mothers, when they're pregnant, when they drink alcohol, you know what happens to the children that are born out of that. So there are those challenges that needs support and integration of different stakeholders, because Department of Health can play a critical role on that one, as well as violence against children within ECD. You know the GBV that we're experiencing as a province, it does also touch on the issues of the children. And another challenge is children with disabilities. I've already alluded to that one. That also needs support in terms of the integration between the stakeholders. And then the provision of food within the ECD centers. We are concerned that those that are not registered and funded, there is a challenge in terms of food because the parents themselves send children to those ECDs that are not registered, which is also a challenge. And then the registration of the ECD centers as partial care facilities. This is in line with the Section 79 of the Children's Act. So that needs all of us to support one another, and as well as the basic health services. I think that one, Department of Health will cover it nicely. And then areas of collaboration, registration of ECDs I've indicated, stimulation and development of the children, Department of Basic Education will take care of that, as well as the ECD essential package. You see, the essential package, the way we see it is that there are 5 domains of nurturing and care. That includes security and safety, health, nutrition, learning and stimulation, as well as responsive care giving. In terms of the way forward, I've covered that. In terms of the way forward, we have a meeting on the 23rd where we are handing over the coordination, which means that all the stakeholders that are involved will be on board, as well as the issue of the documents, the file and everything that is going to the Department of Education. We've already started the process of submitting all the files that we have so that the Department of Education will be able to take over, and there's going to be a continuity after the function is with the Department of Education. This evening, both departments are appearing before the portfolio committees of education and social development to account on the progress in terms of how far are we in terms of the function shift, because April 1 is just it's about a week away from here. So we are ready, and I can confirm that we're looking forward for this process to take place. Thank you very much, Program Director.
Thank you, Mamam Pepetra. Thank you, Mrs. Vilagazi. We really appreciate it. Can I now request MEC Sithole Mloyi to assist us by welcoming and introducing our Premier, Ubaba Ukuzeni. Thank you, Ma'am Mloyi.
Thank you, Program Directors, Mr. Dubazane, kanye no Ms. Mutaung, for giving us this opportunity. Firstly, I want to thank God for giving us this opportunity because it's by grace that we are able to come here. Some would not wake up and others are ill, but God has made us to come and gather here to this Indaba. Sifisa ukubonga uNkulunkulu ngalolu suku oluhle kangaka. I want to greet our Honorable Premier, who is the chair of Human Development Council, but also who is leading as a champion for this Indaba today of an early childhood Indaba. The MECs that are part of the Indaba, which is MEC Shlomuga for Kokta, MEC Mshengu Education, and half of me is MEC Koza and MEC Moloi. All the stakeholders, I wouldn't want to miss any of you because we are all important and also critical for this Indaba. The practitioners in ECDs that are part of this Indaba. Greeting also go to the DG of our province, Dr. Mkhize, and all the SODs, particularly the two SODs that of social development, which is Mrs. Vilagazi and also SOD Waga Education. Now, bonke abasebenzi bama departments onke, including nalaba bavela komasipala bethu. I would safely say all protocol is being observed and ask that I move on to saying ngiyanibingelela nonke enikhona kuIndaba. Good morning to all of you. Good morning. Ngizothula uPrima ngizoswe ngimgodle phela. I think one will attest to the fact that what Mrs. Vilagazi has been presenting and the other members that has presented clearly indicates the state of readiness of our government to transfer the function from Department of Social Development to the Department of Education, and we are ready that we start that by beginning of the new financial year. We'll be ready to do so. That is the presentation that was presented here, and it clearly says where we should actually be partnering and also closing gaps where there are gaps, and certainly we'll deal with that as we move on. But I'm certain with the minds that are seated here will also be able to say where the gaps are being identified by the presentation and where challenges are being identified by the presentation, we'll engage in them and give wisdom on that, so that when we go back and then we compile a report that is going to assist us to say, as people of KwaZulu-Natal, as people of South Africa, we have put this critical sector in a proper state and in a proper place where we can safely say the future of our country is certain, having this been dealt with. Ngithandile nje ukuthi ngiyibheke kanjalo le ndaba ngisazothula into nankulu ngisho nokuthi ke uma si-investa kubantwana bethu si-investa kwisasa lethu kuyona yonke imkhakha, not only kweyokufunda kuphela neyokubagcina but neyokubavula umqondo neyokwazi bazisa sibanikeze ulwazi lwempilo nje olungathinta ukufunda kuphela, ngoba umntwana uthintwa imkhakha emithathu ekuthiwa izinhla zokubafundisa abantwana. Uthintwa ikhaya, umndeni ufundisa umntwana umfundisa nje lezi izifundo ezingatholakala esikoleni, So the first institution engaged nayo is family. La ifundiswa khona ukugeza, la ifundiswa khona ukukhuluma, la ifundiswa khona indlela yokwenza izinto nesikompilo eliphilwayo ekhaya nangaphandle emphakathini. Eyesibili kube umphakathi aphila phakathi kwawo. Bese kuba imfundo lapha esuke sezonikezelana ulwazi oluzomenza ukuthi ke mayiqhubeka la phambili usehamba ke enawo wonke lezi insiza ezizomsiza ukubabhekana nezinselelo zempilo eqhubekela phambili. Ngicabanga ukuthi ke ibaleke kakhulu into yokumqala phansi umntwana ushilo khabazela lapha ya wathi libunjwa liseva. Bengizothi ke mina ke ugotshwa usemanzi ngoba mangabe usugobisa umdala uyaphuka. So ke la ke kuyila kugotshwa khona ulungiswe umiswe ngendlela ukuthi lo muthi sifuna ume kanjani sikhula siya phambili. So ingakho ke isikhathi esiningi mawuthola ukuthi abantwana bayaphuma esandleni, it means the foundation that was what they were given has not made them to be able to rise and move forward with their lives. So it's very important that it's a foundational a sector where you really build a person to become a better person and a person that is going to be responsible and contribute in the future of the country and also in himself or herself and development moving forward. So again, the master builder laid the foundation. Basically, the question that comes after that says, you must be careful on how you build. So when others come after the ECD, they must be careful on the foundation that has been laid, how they are now taking forth that individual and with the foundation that the person has acquired. So, ibalekile ke ECD, siyabonga kakhulu ndonankulu. I felt that I must comment a little bit so that I'm not seen as a person who push amaphepha. Ingabsalibheka nokuthi lithini ama-sentence phakathi. But ke undonankulu ke is the champion and is very passionate with the work that he's doing. Particularly undonankulu wethu is passionate in all respect. I believe it's because he's the chairperson of the African National Congress in the province. He understood that if the ANC is given a responsibility to lead the government, it must lead the government in all sectors and all respect and all walks of life and care for everybody in the province. So that's a premier that we are having, and in all the work that he's doing, he gives everything of himself so that he is sure that what we are going out and telling the people and giving the service to the people, we are giving the quality and we are giving the dignity to our own communities. I'm introducing the Premier of KwaZulu-Natal, Honorable Sihle Zikalala. He is the father of Umazondi. He has children, certainly naye uyathinteka ku-ECD. We certain that when he comes forth, he will then give us the more of insight and also give us a marching orders so that we take this responsibility forward. Kuzeni, I'm not going to dwell on what other responsibility you had before, but you are welcome. And also I want to give you the opportunity to speak to us on this particular Indaba. Thank you.
Thanks. We may be seated, please. Thank you, MEC Mloyi. May I take this opportunity to start by greeting and appreciating the presence of all ECD practitioners. Bonke abafundisa abantwana kwizinga lama-creche ney'nkulisa. Futhi angicele sibashayele ihlombe elikhulu ngemsebenzi omuhle abawenzayo. Program Director, Mr. Dubazane, members of the Executive Council, MEC Mloyi, MEC Mshengu, MEC Hlomuga, we know you are just emerging from the land management in Indaba and we are grateful for your presence here. the first Deputy Chairperson of the Human Resource Development Council in KwaZulu-Natal, Mr. Edwin Mkhize Sibingelele Kabazela. And may I sincerely request an opportunity or to take this opportunity to present an apology on behalf of the second Deputy Chairperson, Mr. Manci, who could not be with us due to other responsibilities. The first Deputy Chairperson of the National Human Resource Development Council, Ms. Azola Mayekiso, sibonga kakhulu, and thanks for your presentation. Members of the Council of the HRD who are here, the CEO of Education, Training and Development Practices, SETA, Mrs. Nxesi, President of the South African Congress for ECD practitioners, Mr. Skhumbuzo Hadebe, the Director General of the Province of KwaZulu-Natal, Dr. Mkhize, HOD Vilagazi for Social Development, and HOD Ngobo for Education. All government officials who are with us, the speakers who are going to present during the proceeding of this Indaba. Fellow compatriots, ladies and gentlemen, sanibonani nonke. It gives me a pleasure to have this opportunity to be part of this very important occasion, the Early Childhood Development Indaba, where we have invited under one roof all stakeholders to engage on issues pertaining to early child development. I have said during the preparations that indeed this might end up be a session where we get tempted to focus on one single matter, which is the migration of ECD function from social development to the Department of Basic Education. I said that because that is not the sole focus of this Indaba. Lana sizoxoxa ngayo yonke into ethinta i-ECD, whether ukumuva kwayiye kwa-education, but ukubheka kodwa futhi ukuthi ukufundiswa kwabantwana ezikoleni, abantwana abancane einkulisa, sikwenza njani ukuthi kube ukufunda kwangempela, futhi kukwazi ukulekelela ukulumbana ne-department yakwa-education, kubambisane, kuhambisane, kube into eyodwa. Ngifuna ukuligcizelela leli phuzu, hayi ngoba ngikubalekela ukuthi sixoxe ngokumuva kwefunction, kodwa asingagcini sibheka udaba olulodwa ezintweni eziningi esibhekene nazo. Impatho yabantwana uma befika, inhlalo yabo, ukufundiswa kwabo, ezemidlalo ngaleso sikhathi, ikusasa la lomkhakha we-ECD. And therefore ngiyacela ukuthi singabi narrowed kuphela sibheke indaba ezimbalwa at the expense of ukubheka konke okufanele. When Ms. Mayekiso was speaking here, she even spoke about the future in as far as the issues of the fourth industrial revolution are concerned. So we must also be positioned ukubheka konke ngokufanele. What gathered here under the theme, providing the children of KwaZulu-Natal a flying start to the future. To do exactly that, which is to unlock the flying start of the future of our children in the province by giving them quality education at a foundation level. We do this because we have a full appreciation of the impact of the solid and quality education at the ECD level. Now, ECD inkulisa iba ne-impact eyinto eyiningi. Eyokuqala ukukhula nje komntwana. Akwazi ukuhlangana nabanye, akwazi ukuba free, afunde ukuthi impilo involve ukuhlangana nabanye abantwana, udlale nabo, ukhule nabo. I-involve futhi inkulisa uqala ukufunda. Uyabona nje, khona abantu bafundile abantu emhlabeni, kodwa ubuyuza ukuthi lo cha ufundile kodwa inkulisa wadlula kuyo ngale minyaka yethu. So makukhuluma abanye bazothi data, kodwa makukhuluma abafowethu bangapha komoya liver bangale minyaka bazothi data. So even indlela yokukhuluma komntwana odlule kwi-proper foundation level uyayizwa. And that's why we are saying we must provide children of KwaZulu-Natal a flying start to the future. As South Africa, we view early child development as a comprehensive approach to programs and policies for children from birth to 7 years of age. We also identify ECD as a crucial service toward the protection of the rights of children to develop their full cognitive, emotional, social, and potential development. The ECD Indaba take place during the Human Rights Month in our country. It also coincides with the Library Week, which is theme reimagine, repurpose, rediscover. The Bill of Rights in our Constitution recognizes the freedom of access to information as a basic human right. In this regard, I would like to hasten to pay tribute to all writers in all our languages who are publishing learning material, including those who are publishing for the ECD sector, and therefore unlocking the imagination of the children of our beautiful country. With moves by our national government to advance mother tongue teaching in an effort to improve learning outcome, we wish to invite more writers and researchers to publish more material also in our indigenous language. Human Rights Month reminds us of the renowned international human rights fighter, the icon, and the founding president of our republic, President Nelson Mandela, who spent many years in prison and who, after he retired, made it his work to contribute to the development of children. It was Madiba who said, as I quote, "The children must at all times play in the open field, no longer tortured by hunger or revenge by diseases, or threatened with the scourge of ignorance, molestation, and abuse, and no longer required to engage in deeds whose gravity exceed the demand of their tender years, close quote. We say this as we draw our understanding on the importance of nurturing children to be the future of the country. As we meet today, our country continues to be the most unequal society in the world. These inequalities were inherited from our past apartheid system, where even the provision of skills and education was a function of racial discrimination and national oppression. Historically, early learning was not considered as a component of child care in South Africa. Instead, programs related to ECD focused primarily on a daycare, emphasizing the basic care and nutrition as only the essential function. Before 1994, the apartheid state is said to have invested 10 times more in the basic education of white learners as compared to black children. Various studies depict that the colonialism and apartheid, along with the resilient and challenging socio-economic conditions, deprived most South African children of their fundamental right, including early education. In our country, which is compounded by poverty, unemployment, and inequality, there is no doubt that investment in the quality of ECD programs for young children has a significant effect toward reducing poverty and inequality. Since the dawn of democracy in 1994, our country has made great strides in realizing the right of education. We made education an apex priority, ensuring that we invest in building an efficient, accessible, and quality education system for children and adolescents. In 2015, there were about 8,207,000 children from birth to 6 years living in South Africa, with a large number of children living in areas afflicted by poverty. Of these 8.2 million, KwaZulu-Natal constituted 23%. Improving the provision of access to grade R. As of 2017, statistics indicate that 74% of grade 1 learners had attended grade R learning. By 2019, more than 47,000 learners in 320 schools across KwaZulu-Natal had access to transport. In 1994, financial assistance to students was about 70 million, and in 2014, it was at 5.9 billion, and in 2018, stands at 15 billion. Now, this is how our government is investing in this system of education as a whole. Khona omunye wakwangixoxela indaba wathi khona kuyakhulunywa nje eSouth Africa Kodwa khona uhulumeni we-ANC wayibeka nje kahle wathi uhulumeni we-ANC kumuntu ufana nezwi lenkosi elithi Moni ngiyohlukana nawe phekwethuna. So uthi lo muntu kumina ufika uhulumeni abhekelele umama esazithwele aye esibhedlela noma eclinic mahala abelethe mahala. Uma nje umntwana etholakala ubaba mengekho kahle ukondla ambhekelele. Mase lo hulumeni futhi abhekelele nemfundo. Umeke wangena esikoleni nje grade R aqale athole yonke into ezikoleni ukudla nakho konke. Ayi umeqeda nje lokho esithi umatric grade 12 uhulumeni abuya diya euniversity. Umeqeda lapho kudinga sebenzeke. Umeke wafika nje kwi-age yokuthi awuya retire qeda ukusebenza amadokotela futhi uhulumeni amfaka empeshenini. Uyoyihola ke impesheni kuyoza phunyuzwa ukuthi hayi adlule emhlabeni. And this is what people have said about the investment that the government have made to the livelihood of the people. Konke lokho engikushoyo kwangenzekanga before 1994. Angisho lokhu ngoba ngiqhakambisa othize, but ngisho ngoba kuliqiniso futhi kuyenzeka. Now, I do want to take this opportunity to address the fundamentals and the fundamental issues that are facing us today with regard to this Indaba. Many of our practitioners are living with anxiety. And I said when I stand up, bafowethu nodade abangapha ngathi ngiyafuna nje ukuthi ngikhulume ezinye izinto ngesintu ukuze izwakale kahle. Futhi sizisho la namuhla. Siyaqonda ukuthi abaningi abakwi-sector ye-ECD bane-anxiety ethi engazi kusasa lisiphatheleni. Abanye babona ukuya kwa-education kuzovala amathuba. As a result, abekho bahle ekutheni lento yenzeke. But kumele siqonde ukuthi kungani uhulumeni uthathe le decision. Uthathe le decision emveni kocwaningo esilibheka umhlaba wonke oluthi ukukhula komntwana eqala nje ukuye crash akukona ukumbheka ukuthi uyalala, uyadla, uyadlala na. Kodwa kuhambisana nokuthi afunde. And therefore uma kuhambisana nokuthi afunde kumele loyo msebenzi uhambisane ulinke nani nomnyango orelevant okumnyango we-basic education. Uhulumeni obukhona before 1994 wawungakhulumi nge-social development. Wawukhuluma nge-social welfare. Okusho ukuthi sizokubhekela nje ukuthi yini engenzeka ngawe. But today we talk of social development because umphakathi kudinga ukukhuliswe. Now in as far as abantwana kubalekile ukuthi ukukhula kwabo ngokwe early child development kube linked kwi-education system. Uma kuba linked kwi-education system kuzofitha ekutheni umntwana mephuma nje enkulisa usayongena esikoleni ngokomqondo uprepared. Now ngiyafuna ukudlulisa leli phuzu. Now iphuzu lesibili Ile anxiety ethi so ke kuzokwenzekani ngathi. Le migration lolu hlelo luzo include ukuthi ama practitioners lawa bekhona athathwe amuvwe ayiswe ka education. Wonke lawa besupportwa yini social development. Abenga supportwa nje social development as a social development. Abe supportwa social development as part of uhulumeni. Njengoba eshilo uHOD umsebenzi uhambisana nebudget. Ukuhanjiswa kwalolu hlelo liyaka education kuhamba nebudget yakhona isiyomanejwa kwa education. Ama practitioners azobheka abantwana abebheka abantwana azoqhubeka babheke, but added to that kuzomela aqeqeshwe manje ukuze akwazi ukuthi amelane nomsebenzi wokulinka nedepartment yani yakwa education. Lama practitioners azodinga ukuqeqeshwa ukuze abantwana mabephuma kule system bangene kalula kwi education system yesu. So I thought I should take this responsibility. Ningaze nenze le summit ibe about ukuthi sizoba yini. And the fact that there is a move of this function was not about ukuvalela amathuba abantu abarana ama ECD centers. So siyafuna ukunika isiqiniseko akona ukuthi sivalela amathuba kodwa ukwazi ukucoordinate kahle uhlelo. And that's why even in this program, in the program for today, we have also have a presentation that look on the ECD as part of the social economic sector. Siyazi ukuthi abanye bayakwazi ukufundraiser bazenzele ama-crash, and that will not be closed. But konke okwenzekayo akukhanda umntwana akhule from the beginning azayoqeda imfundo yakhe esesimeni esikahle ngokomqondo. Sifisa bakwethu uqeda ngalento ethi umntwana ohlala eWestville ahluke kunomntwana ohlala eClermont nomntwana ohlala kaNqetho. Njengamanje umntwana ohlala eWestville une-advantage enkulu, unamathuba amaningi. Ohlala eClermont ungconywana. Ohlala kaNqetho usekugcineni kwelata. And therefore sifuna ukuthi kuphele konke lokho. Sikwazi ukuthi oseWestville umefunda kwi-ECD into ethize, leyo nto iyafundwa maphi eClermont, iyafunda kaNqetho. So that is how we want to align this system. So I would want to take this opportunity to pay tribute to the National Department of Social Development and the KZN Provincial Department of Social Development for the outstanding work they've performed and the leadership they provided in this sector. We remain one government focusing on full development of our people, and therefore this shift does not mean that lessons that were gained over the years will be thrown out of the window. Far from that, this is a golden opportunity to work together as one government and stakeholders to provide children of KwaZulu-Natal a flying start to the future. We will continue working closely with the labor to address concerns of workers to ensure that the change is better managed. You will all recall that the promotion of early learning culminated in the ECD 2030 vision as reflected in the National Development Plan, which moved from a child protection and child care to emphasize the quality of early learning focus. Through the function shift, the Department of Basic Education will seek to ensure access of all children to efficient services, quality play, but also quality learning. Migrating the responsibility will consolidate the quantum of education and allow the department to manage the educational journey of young children from their start till the end. Early child development programs will be part of the basic education system and will be informed by the national curricular framework for children from birth to 4 years and from there up until they graduate. We want to also emphasize that we have embraced this idea from the beginning because we understood that it is aimed at development of children and, more importantly, quality education. MEC Mshengu, who is tasked with the leadership of the Department of Education, tells us that he has respected and fully acted on our directive that his department and the Department of Social Development should work together in managing this shift. We have been informed here that you have already visited some of the centers. And therefore, the beginning of April with the shift of this function will not mark the difference, but it will be the continuation of all services that we know. It is our view that this program, which we collectively embrace, will provide opportunity to engage the current state of ECD with all other offerings that are potential from the Department of Education. Responding to that will be the need to embrace the fourth industrial revolution as a package. But also we know that knowledge is power, and therefore we should impart knowledge to children at a young stage. In 2017, it was also established that in terms of spatial location of children residences, about 60% of children under 6 years live in rural and farm areas. These are some of the challenge areas where we need to grapple with the provision of improved ECD teaching. And therefore, I would want to invite all of you to this engagement with no fear, no anxiety. Let us focus on this issue of migration, this shift of the function, but let us also be concerned about the welfare. How do we protect children when they come to our centers? Right from the beginning, when they come to our centers, we should work with them to understand that boys and girls are equal. And that will help us to fight the stereotype that exists in the society. We should ensure that right from the beginning, we unleash potential that they have so that in future, they are able to live out of their potential. Those who understand football will tell you that Messi is said to have started playing football at the age of about 5 years. At the age of 7 years, he was starting to play in a full way. And then, before he finalized his primary education, he was already enlisted in the global soccer team. And therefore, the potential of children is there at that foundation level. La umntwana esenza izinto anganaki, angazi nokuthi wenzani. And therefore, the ECD practitioners carries more responsibility to identify the talent, potential, but shortcomings of children and assist them. Kuthiwa ukhula kahle uma ufunde usemncane. And then thina esisebenza loyo msebenzi asibalekelele abantwana. Bakwazi ukuthi bakhule kahle ngokuthi uma sibona ama weaknesses ukuthi lo uyashesha dinwe, simqale semncane ukumfundisa ukuthi hayi impilo ayikona ukudinwa. Impilo ukuthi ukwazi ukukhuluma nabantu babekezelele noma bethi. Sazi ukuthi abantwana bangakhuli benodlame. And sikwazi futhi ukuqala ukubafaka ezintweni ezizobayisa phambili. One professor said to me, ingane zakhe idlala ngawo wonke ama-toys, kune-toys angalivumi. And lelo yi-toys lesibhamu. And I was impressed to hear that. He then said to me, ingane zami ivumelekile ukubuka i-TV between any time uma ibuya esikoleni. But at 8 o'clock iyacishwa because idinga ifunde. So that zibe at least no 2 hours ukufunda, zilale u8 hours kusasa ivuke siye esikoleni. So abanye abantu bakwazi ukuplana impilo yemndeni yabo from ekseni till the following morning. But uma thina siyibukela phansi sector esikuyo, sizongakwazi ukulekelela lemndeni eletha abantwana kuthina. And therefore, we invite you not to be scared about the new environment. Seize the opportunity as it is. And one thing that I can't live without emphasizing, you yourself as practitioners, you must be prepared to learn. Nani kuzomele nifunde. Nazi ukuthi impilo manje ayifani. Impilo iyashintsha usuku nosuku. Izinto ebezenzeka kuqala ziningi engasenzeki manje. 2 days ago, I had an opportunity to address or to be part of a land summit. Ebi conveno MEC uhlomuka kwakhona. And participating in that discussion, I said, the spatial planning has an effect on development of the society. If you go to areas like all districts we have, there are things that you don't get in rural areas. But in rural areas that are in eThekwini, that you will get. Umuya kwaXimba eWard 1. Umufika kunento ebizwa la eThekwini ngo Sizakala Center. Umufika khona uthola abantwana behlezi ngaphandle kwaSizakala Center. Bonke basemafonini. It is because there is Wi-Fi. They get Wi-Fi kalula. Namuhla abantwana abancane sebeqala ukusebenzisa amafoni beno 4 years. And therefore nathi kumele sazi ukuthi kudinga sibafundise abantwana. Le presentation ebiyenziwa la, in fact, umntwana eseklasini kumbe esenkulisa kuzomela simkhandaza ukuthi ume esikoleni uzongafundi ngezithombe kuphela. Kuzoba nama presentations nazo zonke lezo zinto. And therefore we are here also to plead with you. Sizonicela nani ukuthi njengoba sinithembisa ukuthi le function yokumuva ayisho kuphela komsebenzi kunina, kodwa nani sicela nifunde. Ukuze nikwazi ukusilekelela ukwakha lo mntwana ozoba ingxenye ye-4th Industrial Revolution. Ozokwazi ukuthi uma ekuphuma esayongena esikoleni la kubhalwa ngekhompyutha khona angabi namahloni naye aqala angene khona. And therefore siyanicela ukuthi nani nibe ingxenye yethu. Let us build and mold children together from embracing the values of our country, embracing the value of Ubuntu, to education system, to development of their potential talents, and integrate them in the learning system and in the society. Angabibikho umntwana ophuma kwi-ECD center engazi ukuthi iflag lase South Africa lisho ukuthini. Engazi ukuthi what are the national symbols of this country. If we are to imbue patriotism, we must start at that level. And therefore, we also beg you, be prepared to learn, but also be free to make your own suggestions. We call on all of us to contribute in growing KwaZulu-Natal together. Ngiyabonga.
Thank you so much, Kuzeni. I wasn't aware that you are also very strong on ECD. I'm really impressed. Thank you. We have joined Omkhulu. Thank you so much. We are going to do a slightly change in our program. In view of the fact that time seems to be running against us. Okay. Thank you, Ms. Mbata. According to the gift, we should be going for tea. But if I recall, we started a little bit late, and most of us were already, and some of us were still busy with tea. In the meantime, what I will request us to do is that now that the Premier, as the keynote speaker, has addressed us, and remember that there were other speakers before him. We had Usisi Azola, who surprised me because also, this is a financial person, but the way she related on issues of ECD was amazing. So was Ubaba Umkeze, and I don't have to talk about Umama Uvilagas because at the end of the day, this has always been her baby, which very soon she will be handing over to basic education. Maybe it's high time that now those of us who were recording the questions and comments, maybe we take this opportunity to afford you that opportunity to raise those questions or comments that you want to make. And I'm going to be giving you about 15 minutes to do that, and immediately thereafter, when we are done with that 15 minutes, we will then have a 5-minute session where Ubaba Umbomvu, who is a DDG in the Premier's office, will be requested to assist us by handing over the gift to the Premier. accompanied him will be my colleague, Ms. Dineo Hona, who is part of the sponsorship from UNISA, who will then be assisting again with the handing over the gifts to the other speakers that came before the Premier. You are now invited to engage on the question and comment session. Any comment from the floor or any comments from the colleagues who are online? Let me request that if you see anything that is coming from the online platform, maybe you assist us by reading it so that it can also be shared with the audience that is here today. Sir, you are noted. Any other? You are noted, you are number 1. Siswami, you are noted number 2 in red there. Any other? You are third, my brother there. Any other person, please? Any other? You are the 4th one, my sister. Can we take comments and questions in that order, please? Thank you. You can introduce yourself first and then raise a question or comment.
Good morning. I'm Skumbuzo Hadebe, the Provincial Chairperson of the SA Congress for ECD. I have a question for the Premier and Ms. Azola here about the 4th Industrial Revolution. I would like to know, Ms. Azola and Mr. Premier, as you're speaking about the 4IR, we are looking forward to embrace it in our centers. We've already started. But my question is, will the government assist us in facilities like the gadgets so that we can implement these projects? Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. I am Nogukanya Dlamini from Hambarambe Youth Employment Accelerator. Thank you so much for the presentations that we had. I'm just going to combine what each speaker has said and then maybe just need clarity. So we know that Mr. Mkhize especially emphasized the issue of brain stimulation. And then we had Ms. Mayegiso, who was speaking about the skills needed by the practitioners so that, you know, we unleash what the Premier has said, Ukuzen, we unleash the potential, the gift and the talent of the young people. The question therefore is there a matrix that the ECDs are going to use to indicate the potential that they have identified in each young person? And is that report going to be forwarded to grade 1? Is it going to be part of the movement of the young person from grade 1 to grade 12? The question is, why is this important? Is because so that in grade 9, the children are already, they know their potential and their talent, and it's going to be much easier to select, therefore, the particular subjects that they can take, and to avoid this bottleneck when students are done with matric, they don't even know their potential, they don't know their talent, and they go to universities and they learn something that they don't gravitate towards too. And then we have this high unemployment rate of graduates. Thank you.
Sanibonani nonke la endlini. Ngingu Dr. Cabashe we psychology at University of Durban DUT Durban University of Technology. I'm out on medical boarding kodwa sengiyazibona ukuthi ngiyaphila manje, that is why I am here. Thank you very much Premier and the MECs that are here today for this opportunity and also the challenge that we are faced with regarding the ECD education. I've been worried over years about what is the government doing in connection with the ECD, looking at how our young ones in the larger population, especially the rural areas, are being educated by people who are not trained. Now that they are going to be educated by people who are trained, it gives me much pleasure. I am really concerned about this ECD. And I wish to know from the government side the plans that they have in the gap that is there between the trained and the untrained, and those that are already in the field of teaching the ECD. What are the government's plans to educate them or to skill them so that they will be able to be in par with those that are skilled from universities? The ECD is so important that it builds up a curricula of a child for grade 10, 11, and 12, because our matric today starts from grade 10, 11, and 12. It's a 3-year program. But if the child was not trained properly at ECD level, the child won't be able to choose, as the lady said, will not be able to choose the correct subject, the potential that the child has from grade for the matric and up to university, and that increases the degrees that are not wanted or needed by the economy of South Africa. I therefore request the department to provide or to do their best in taking care of moving forward this ECD program. And I also offer my services as a psychologist who has dealt with all the stages of development of the child, to be part of this and also to serve where I can possibly be. My most important area is Indwedwe, Umsunduze, Sonkombo, all those areas, Wamota. I am prepared to help there in bringing up ECD to a level and also to help the black child to be in par with those that are in better schools in urban areas. I have a child whom the father neglected me at birth, and I took that opportunity to grow up, to help the child to develop fully, because I was shifted the love of the father to this child to get the best. And indeed, that child can also be a model for us all today, because he is fully rounded and groundly educated because of that. Other than the ECD, we should also concentrate on the kindergarten, the education, the legal education that is there at the kindergarten. When I'm referring to the kindergarten, I am...
Siyabonga, Dr. Cabashe.
Okay, thank you.
Please, thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson. Okay. I'm begging Kosinkala from the Department of Education, Nogo District, Early Childhood Development Section. Thank you very much, Premier Netimbalako, for organizing this conference. And I would like to thank Kakulu, the 54th conference of the ANC, which took the decision that this migration must actually happen. And we appreciate ukuthi when decisions are taken in conferences of that nature, they get implemented. We are saying pick up to that conference. Sihle Zikalala ANC ngalo decision. My question is, I'm happy that Premier Nosisnokzola Nomambaloy bakhulumile ngendaba ka ECD in particular. The question I've got is that ECD throughout the province is the most understaffed directorate. There are districts that have got one individual or one official to attend to about 1,000 classes. That is grade R classes plus RR classes. I would like to hear if there is any urgent attempt to ensure that that is being corrected. The last question is, which was also raised by Umam Moloi and Sisnokzola. We have got learners that are displaced. If I'm talking about ECD learners that are displaced, I'm talking about learners that are in ECD centers and they're not supposed to be there. I nearly cried being such a man as Msinga when I visited Super Kid ECD Center at Kamalake, and I came across a very smart 8-year-old girl who is in an ECD center sitting and playing with learners that are 3-year-olds. She's not in the school, mainly because she presents with the autism. Because there is no direct policy that is actually assisting us as the department to ensure that learners that are in ECD centers are assessed psychologically and by speech therapists and physiotherapists, and then be placed in special schools in a proper way. The worst part of it, in conclusion, it became worse when I left the ECD center and the child followed me and there was a car driving past. She was nearly knocked down by that car. So it is my appeal that we can have a clear policy that is going to accommodate the learners that are in ECD centers, especially 0 to 4 years, and to ensure that we staff ECD directorate in a manner that it accommodates the number of learners and the kind of work or the amount of work that is supposed to be done.
Siyabonga. I'm told that there are 2 of the delegates that are online. 2 of them want to raise question or comment. Anybody amongst them can do that. Are you in a position to read the question for us, please?
Good morning, Chairperson.
Good morning, we can hear you. You can proceed.
Thank you very much. Good morning and all protocol observed. I'm Renee Mons and I'm from NAPTOSA, the provincial chairperson. I've heard a lot about unqualified practitioners, chairperson, but as the MEC will be aware, there are qualified people within the space of the grade R practitioners. My concern is the conditions of service of those qualified who will be taken over My concern is around equal pay.
We can't hear you now. You seem to be losing us.
My concern, Chair, is the principle of good practice of equal work, equal pay for work of equal practice. Thank you.
Thank you. Another colleague, but maybe, ma'am, whilst you have left the mic, can I request that maybe through the chat box, you send us the very same issues that you have just been raising via the chat box, please. Thank you. Second person online, please.
Colleagues, hello.
Hello.
Good day, Chairperson. Thank you so much, and all protocols observed. I am Tutu Nompumelelo Madonda from University of KwaZulu-Natal in early childhood education discipline. Part of our job is to do community engagement, where we support ECD centers in community. So I have worked with Cato Manor area because I reside there, my home is there, and I have found that there are a lot of gaps, especially on the ownership syndrome. We have found that a woman who has taken over from a mother cannot run the ECD center properly. And it's just a comment. I would like the government to assist those supervisors who are new in the sector because they have taken over from the well-established supervisors. So there is a lot of the ownership syndrome that has been mentioned by my sister, Mrs. Vilagazi. I would like the department to note it because we have noticed that there is a lot of challenges facing ECD centers in our communities because of that ownership syndrome. Thank you.
Thank you. I am now going to be handing over the mic to our Premier and other colleagues who were the presenters today. I'm sorry, maybe before Premier responds, can I request the last person in the house who wanted to raise a question? My sister there, you were the last one, I'm sorry. It's coming.
Sanbonani, umama Mhlongo lona endaweni yaseVerulam, Ebenezer Crash, kwiforum Our Vision. Ngithanda ukubonga nje okokuqala ku Premier wethu ukuthi beshaya uvalo impela Premier ukuthi ndi practitioner ukuthi sekuzophucwa kumsebenzi wethu njengoba kusuka kwa basic education. Siyayibonga ukuthi uyihlisile lo anxiety ebesinayo. Then kukhona umbuzo enginawo khona ipoint eliraiswe ngumama uVilakazi elikhulume ngeconditional grant. Cela ubuza ukuthi le conditional grant itholwa ngabantu abanjani futhi ngawaphi ama izinto efuneka kube unazo ukuze uapply zona. Okugcina siyacela ukuthi kungagcini kwi-surrounding yaseThekwini kuke kuphunywe kuyena ngaseVerulam ngoba into ezininzi zigcina kwi-surrounding le kuphela. Thina esile kuma-rural areas ko-Verulam sigcine sizwa ngendaba. Siyacela yilokho kuphela, ngiyabonga.
Siyabonga. Ngiyacela babukhuzeni.
No, thanks. We request alasbonge yonke imbuzo ebekiwe. President, we think we will have to work together around issues of not only gadget, but services and required support as a whole in a structured way. So the Department of Education through the MEC and the HOD will be working with you together with unions as well. The second point, indeed, Ms. Dlamini, the metrics will need to be developed so that it is an integrated system where one level feed to the other. And therefore the system will be developed in that particular way that is integrated. The issue of the appropriate training and stuff, I think the tomorrow morning sessions will be dealing with that in detail. And I think it will be better to allow Uguti tomorrow we engage on that kahle, because there are two presentations that are dealing with empowering ECD practitioners with practical information about trainings and about the curriculum. The issue of the 8-year learner, yeah, it's quite a challenge, but I'm sure through education that can be attended, because there is even an attempt to have a school focusing to learners with challenge who are challenged in the autism school. I think one was to be established here in Mlazi. So the department will be able to work on that. Though I didn't get the name, but she said she's speaking on behalf, or she is a representative of NAPTOSA. We will be engaging with the unions about issues of services, remuneration, but we also know that unions, at some point, they focus more on protection and the decent conditions for those who are employed. But in this case, we must know we're dealing with a sector where others have not been unionized. And we will request that we work together with unions and stakeholders. I think Dr. Kabashe was clear, and we appreciate the need to train the practitioners, and that will be done. Mama Mhlongo, the conditional grant, I'm sure at some point HOD will clarify that point. I fully agree with you. We must not cover only eThekwini, though Verulam is part of eThekwini, but ney'ndawo engaphandle kupheleni kweTheku kumele siyibheke. I'm sure that other colleagues will add, because the questions were not directed to myself alone, but that's how far I can summarize. I could summarize the responses with an understanding that other colleagues will add. Thank you.
Sis Azola. Ngicela ukuneza Sis Azola.
Thank you. Premier, I think we covered most of it. I don't have much more to add. The only one he did not address was around the ownership syndrome. And I think that ultimately, if we are going to get to a point where we standardize the provision, it now falls under the DBE, and if all of them get registered, they will therefore be subject to the requirements that the DBE, lays down as the law, a framework within which to operate. So at the end of the day, I think that should take care of that problem of the ownership syndrome. And then the last question we have not addressed because we didn't hear the speaker, so I'm not sure whether they typed it out.
Okay, thank you. Sis Ruby, ngicela ukunezela Sis Ruby khethiwe. Ngicela unikeze Sis Ruby. My program director is also an ECD practitioner, now manager / director. So it's a subject that is closer to her heart as well.
No, just put it simply, an ECD activist. That covers everything. I just want to add to what Ula Zola has said to kind of highlight the most critical important question. That one, we are here today because we're gathering, different stakeholders, very relevant in making sure that we've got the same understanding of where we want to take ECD in the KZN. So the reason why we're all here, we do not have all answers to the question. I'm not trying to run away, but the reality of the fact that we want to understand exactly what are the challenges within the sector in focusing in the KZ area. And some of the questions that have been asked, Chairperson, are going to be responded to by the presenters that are coming after lunch. But in closing, I want to highlight exactly what Azola has said in terms of standards. We all know there have never been standards in terms of standardizing the ECD sector. Now we are in the process of professionalizing the sector. There was a policy that was gazetted in 2017 that is talking into details the kind of a teacher that we need in the ECD sector. So those are the issues that we're here to collect and make sure that at the end of the day, we're coming with an implementation plan. And I want to challenge NAM on that. I want to stand on the other side now to say the implementation plan that will be coming out of this conference or Indaba must not be a poster in the office of the Premier, but it must be a workable, document that will be able to come back and say, in 2022, this is what you people said, and this is where we are in terms of addressing those challenges. Thank you so much.
Thank you, my co-program director. Thank you, colleagues. May I now request Mrs. Vilagazi, HOD or Social Development, ngicela naye a responde, ngicela umnikezele. And I must say immediately after her, I will then request Baba Umbovu no Sis Dinewo to come and do the presentation of gifts.
Thank you very much, Program Director. Thank you for the question. I-conditional grant, inikezwa labo, angithi ngoba besenza i-process of registering ama-ECDs. I-ECD ayikwazi ukuthola i-support ingekho registered. It must meet certain criteria. So you find that there are those ECDs where ithola mhlambi conditional registration, it can't get a full registration because kunezinto eyishodayo mhlamba abanawo ama-toilet that will compromise ingane ezigaladele toilet, mhlamba amawindow ecasemate and so on. So then the allocation that we received ayikho ningi as a conditional grant. So we prioritized our ECDs in different districts that were then given a conditional grant. But a conditional grant, it comes from national to support these ECDs. Outside eThekwini, for example, there are those that were prioritized within Ilembe and other districts. Kodwa ke siyawazi namanye ane conditional registration that can be supported. Kodwa ke umfowethu uMapholoba la uyena kusezoqhubeka lapho ke ngoba ikhona conditional grant that is being transferred to the Department of Education ukuze siqhubekele phambili. Asikhethi kodwa are those that we support ukuze amithe ama minimum norms and standards. Iwoga athola i-conditional grant. Ikabili ke na i-conditional grant. Khone ensure i-access othola ukuthi mhlambe as a province i-budget esinayo bese ngakwazi ukuthi sifanda amaningi, then you get that conditional grant ezokwenza ukuthi abantwana bakwazi ukuthi badle isupporteke i-ECD, that is increasing access. Then there is another one that looks into infrastructure. Hence I was saying there are also officials responsible for that who are then moving with their function. Thank you very much. I'm sure there is clarity. Thank you.
Thank you, Mama Mpepetra. Thank you so much. I'm now going to be handing over to my two colleagues, Ubaba Umbomvu Kale, asi handle over a gift to Ubaba Ukuzeni. Then thereafter, he will be joined by my sister Udinewo Hona for the other gifts as well. Immediately after that, colleagues, you will all be invited, you are all invited for lunch once they are done with the presentation of these gifts. And I'm not going to be taking the podium thereafter. I will hand it over to my colleague, Osisi Urupi Mdaunge, who will start immediately when we come back for lunch. Thank you. Mama Stole Mloyi. My chairperson, Babu Mkize. Sisi Azola. Oops, Sisi Azola. Oh, there she is. Okay. Oh, I didn't know that you are an athlete. That means you are a good athlete if you can run with the high heels. Mrs. Tole, the HOD. Mrs. Villagas, I meant to say, sorry. Mrs. Villagas. Hi. We declare. Thank you so much, Babu Mbomvu and Sister Hona, with the presentation of the gifts. Can I now allow my colleague to say something before we go for lunch?
Molweni, ngokuzithoba okukhulu, sine numbers ezidlulileyo kwinani ebesilungiselele. We've got more numbers than we have anticipated. But that is not a train smash. All we are asking is that all those people with name tags